Today I saw two movies. I actually was originally just going to see the one film. And then when I was looking up the times, I saw this other film that was playing and I was like, what even is this? And then ended up watching it. So I'll explain which two films those are. That would be Mike White's Brad's Status. So this premiered at TIFF earlier this year. And I'm sort of on the fence about seeing it, mostly because the poster's really terrible. But I like Ben Stiller, and I particularly like Ben Stiller who feels unfulfilled by life movies. There's several of these, and every time I watch them, I'm like, I relate to this character, and it's uncomfortable because you shouldn't relate to the character because usually he's an asshole. The one exception to the Ben Stiller doesn't relate to life movie where he's not really an asshole is The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. He's just lonely and needs a little confidence. But in the other movies, he's kind of an asshole, like Greenberg. But I completely relate to Greenberg. So, spoiler alert, I might be an asshole. This movie is about Brad, played by Ben Stiller, who's taking his son Troy across the country from Sacramento to Boston to take him to visit a few colleges, including Harvard. The whole film is sort of told in voiceover as Brad narrates sort of his thought process as this is happening and as he looks back on his life and comparatively to his friends from college and how they're all in places that he feels are more successful and more successful in terms of like status than he is, even though he's done well and he's raised this good child and this child's about to have a great future. And the film sort of follows his discovery that like really what matters is not his life in comparison to other people, but his life, period, and his family, and that what he did in life was create this wonderful kid who's going to go off and then have another life. And but there's also this great moment halfway through the movie or so where he starts to really think about how he's done a great job with this kid, but then he starts to think if the kid has success, is he going to like resent his own child's success? And that's a moment that's so real, so real. So I really liked it because I thought it was very insightful and it very much showed facets of adulthood that I think aren't often talked about in terms of just our own self-worth and how hard it is not to compare yourself to others, especially when our entire life, modern life, is set by milestones. And that's like growing up, you measure your life on milestones. You measure your life on your grades, and you measure your life on what college you go to, and et cetera, et cetera. And then to stop measuring yourself in comparison to others and to stop competing with others that way when you're raised that way, it's difficult. There's an awkward scene with one of Ben Stiller's characters' college friends, played by Michael Sheen, who's arguably the most successful. And the Sheen character just completely does not understand where Stiller's character is coming from because he's at a different sort of phase of like, he's so arrogant that he does not compare himself to others. And I think this comparative, the way in which a lot of people compare themselves to others comes at, what am I trying to say? Like there's certain people who will never compare themselves to others, and there's certain people who have ambitions and their ambitions don't quite measure up with the results in their life, and those type of people I think tend to compare themselves to others a lot more, spoiler alert, I'm one of those, than average people or people who just have that success that just keeps on going. The one thing, and there's a great moment where he is sort of giving his sort of sad, like, my life isn't what I thought it would be story to this young woman at Harvard who's basically like, shut the fuck up. Your life is great and you're complaining for no reason. And it was a great sort of moment where basically a millennial just was like, shut the fuck up. Like, you're fine, Gen Xer, you're fine. And so that was interesting. The sort of moment that I think didn't really work was they have Jenna Fisher as his wife and Troy's mother, and one, Jenna Fisher, isn't quite old enough. She's like 43 compared to Stiller's 48. So I guess that's not too bad. She just looks so much younger than him that I guess it felt uncomfortable. But now that I know their age difference isn't that bad, except that she would have had to have a kid at 26, which is just too young in my book. Her character is really underdeveloped, and you see almost everybody how he sees them, and then you get moments where you finally get to see the real them, and the them that he imagines and the them that really exists obviously is very different. But the mother character and the wife character, you see really her, and I felt like you didn't get to see enough of her to really understand the family dynamic, other than the presentation of the family dynamic that you get from him. So that was really my only complaint about the film. Otherwise, I liked it, and there were several moments where I was like, this is too real. I'm feeling attacked. And it was like the perfect time for me to watch this movie, I think, kind of, because I was having sort of, last night, I was having one of those, like, everything sucks and I hate my life moments. And then I watched this and I'm like, you know what? Shut up, Mariah. Your life is fine. My life is fine. Your life is probably fine too. So stop comparing yourself to other people. That's really my whole entire life was basically like people who are older than me, like counselors and things, telling me to stop comparing myself to my brother, and then I started comparing myself to other people, and it's just been downhill ever since. And I need to stop. Thank you, Brad Status. So the next film I watched was California Typewriter. I had never even heard of this film. Apparently, it premiered at Telluride last year. I'd not heard of it, but it's set in the California Typewriter shop in Berkeley that I'm pretty sure I have been to, and had Sam Shepard in it. And I was like, full stop, I'm going to watch it. And so it talks about talks to several people who use typewriters and or collect typewriters, including Tom Hanks and what's his name, David McCullen. I can't say his name right. David McCullen and Sam Shepard. That's why I was watching it. Oh no, and John Mayer. So apparently, like, John Mayer felt like he needed his songwriting to be more tangible, so he started working on a typewriter. And his whole idea of why he uses typewriters was really fascinating. Hanks apparently collects typewriters. He has like 250, and he gives them as gifts to people, which I think is fantastic. And I want a gift from Tom. I want a gift typewriter from Tom Hanks. I promise I'll use it. Sam Shepard obviously likes to type on a typewriter. He compared typing on a typewriter to riding a horse, and how he would prefer to ride a horse than drive a car, but you have to be able to be in a situation where riding a horse is okay, and same with a typewriter. I thought that was great. He had this great quote where he said that everybody is a culture, every individual is a culture, and that it's that greater culture that he doesn't truly understand. And I was like, Sam Shepard, I miss you so much. There were also like a sculptor who makes sculptures from typewriters, some really interesting typewriter collectors, and then the namesake California Typewriter, the shop, and the people who run it, a man who's worked there for 15 years, how they use social media to really reinvigorate their shop, and how this sort of back to earth movement is getting people back to typewriters. And it really works as typewriter propaganda. It like made me want to get a typewriter. And as a person who mostly listens to music on vinyl, I'm clearly that sort of analog millennial who likes this kind of things. I've never had a typewriter, but I liked, John Mayer talked about how in his artistic process, writing on a typewriter helped him work through, stay in the artistic lane without self-editing, because there's no spell check or grammar check or anything causing him to edit. He just went. And as someone who has that same problem and has a trouble automatic writing and has trouble just sitting down and writing because the internet and everything else that comes with the computer, I was like, whoa. So maybe I would I would write more if I actually used a typewriter. I don't know. I used to handwrite everything in college for that very same reason. So I guess long live the typewriter. I really enjoyed this documentary. I'm loving documentaries this year. There are so many good documentaries. There's at least like 15 more documentaries I have to see before this year ends. My whole top 10 is going to be like half documentaries this year. It's been creeping that way for the last couple of years. There's just so many good documentaries. Why have I missed them for so long? So, Brad's Status was written and directed by Mike White. California Typewriter was by Doug Nichol. They're both in theaters right now. You should check them out. And tomorrow I'm going to go see another film because that's all I do with my life. But it's my life is good and your life is good and both of our lives are good and everyone's life is probably fine. Especially if you're watching a review on YouTube, you've got access to a computer, you're good. Have a good night.